Do you like playing chess, but feel sad because you'll never be the best? Grandmasters like Magnus Carlsen probably started playing when they were like 2, so you'll never catch up. And besides, computer AI players have been crushing humans ever since Garry Kasparov lost to Deep Blue in 1997. Since it's such a gloomy time for the casual chess player, we need a revolution of sorts. We need a new 2-player tile-based strategy game that's just as fun as chess, but still unexplored, so you have a chance at being number 1. It's time for this game to bring death to the old and life to the new. Like, a game of life and death. Yeah, game of life and death. Yes, this game is on the App Store for free right now, so if you want to download it and play along, go ahead. For non-Apple people, I promise an Android version will come out eventually, but I'm a busy college student, so don't expect too much. Game of Life and Death, or GOLAD for short, is a pretty cool game. By the way, all the chess bashing earlier was just a joke. I don't really want GOLAD to replace chess, the two should coexist. Moving on, I would explain the game mechanics, but my app already has a built-in tutorial. So maybe it's better if I just record myself playing through that tutorial to teach you guys how it works. Here we go. The GOLAD app is on the home screen, and you can tell by this beautiful icon. So you tap it. I'm gonna flip into horizontal mode so that people don't complain in the comments. So just so that this is the most accessible to the most viewers, I'm gonna assume that you know nothing. So as we go into the tutorial, let's say, I don't know what Conway's Game of Life is. So this starts entirely from scratch. Conway's Game of Life consists of a grid of living, meaning white, or dead, meaning black, cells. So you can see here, this cell right here is is alive, and then this cell down here is dead. And you can use your fingers to zoom around. And I actually programmed this manually because I'm not very good at using other people's work. But you can just experiment around birthing and killing cells. And you can also see how neighbors work, because A here, as a cell, has 3 living neighbors, because when it checks for its neighborhood, that's the 8 surrounding tiles. So tile A is alive and has 3 neighbors. Now it has 4 neighbors, and now it has 5 neighbors. And I can also kill it directly, so you can see tile A is now dead. So these are just the basics of how cells work. But as you can tell, cells aren't changing automatically. How can we learn the rules of how the physics of this universe actually work? Well, let's continue through the tutorial now. And in this version, you can see every single cell is labeled with how many neighbors it has. So for example, this cell right here has 3 living neighbors, here, here, and here. So it's labeled with a 3. Now, according to my own tutorial, it says, I wonder if I should close the window. They probably can't hear it. Yeah. Cells are labeled with their neighbor count. When a life iteration occurs, dead cells become alive if they have exactly 3 neighbors. Alive cells die unless they have 2 or 3 neighbors. For example, this dead cell has exactly 3 living neighbors, which is also why it's highlighted yellow. If I tap do life iteration, it'll do all the calculations described here, and it becomes alive. And then a living cell who doesn't have 2 or 3 neighbors, like this one here, which only has 1 neighbor, it will die in the next iteration. Because if it's too low, you could say that's because of loneliness or lack of infrastructure, and if it's too high, you could say it's because of overpopulation, crowding, lack of resources, and so on. So yeah, cells can also die by having too many neighbors. Here's 2 cells that have 4 neighbors, which is too high. And as you keep hitting do life iteration, the formations evolve, which is the most interesting part of Game of Life. Eventually, all formations stabilize, but it can take quite a while to get there. So there, in the end, in that case, all cells died, but there are certain formations that don't die. For example, a 2x2 block doesn't change at all as you do life iterations. And also, a 3x1 block, known as a blinker to Conway's Game of Life fanatics, switches between 2 states, like that. So that's pretty interesting, and people have studied many ways in which formations in Conway's Game of Life interact with each other, and they've been able to form calculators, universal construction machines. It's all quite advanced. Anyway, moving on to the next page. The center of each cell is now marked with what will happen to that cell after 1 life iteration. This mark is only cosmetic, making it easier for humans to predict the future. Right, so, for example, this cell right here is alive because if you ignore the dot in the middle, it's white. But the dot says after one life iteration, it will be black, dead. And that's in fact what happens. Similarly, a dead cell with a white dot in the middle means it's still dead, but in the next iteration it will be born. And you can also tell that that's true just by the fact that it has 3 neighbors. But the marks give you a quick way of seeing what's going to happen in the next generation without having to count for yourself. So you know that this whole row of 5 cells is instantly going to be born without having to think about it. Also, this was Michael's idea, so if Michael wants credit, he can get credit. Yay, Michael! So as of this point, this is still the generic, typical Conway's Game of Life without any new rules applied. As in, you haven't seen full Game of Life and Death yet, you've only seen Game of Life, which everyone already knows. But now here's where things change. We're gonna introduce colors! Wow, that's so beautiful! Let's add colors to living cells. Cells are born only if they had 3 neighbors. They take on the color of the majority of these parents. They stay that color until they die. Right here, this cell has 3 neighbors, so if you just ignore colors for now and only see things as either lit up or dead, it should be born, right? Because any dead cell with 3 neighbors becomes alive. So we already know it's going to be born, but now that we have colors, we're going to look at the color of the majority of its 3 parents to determine that it will in fact be born red. And then for the rest of its lifetime, no matter what happens around it, it will stay red. Unless it's dead and then becomes born again, like that, then it could be born blue. But the point is, cells' colors are only determined upon birth, and that's it. So now you can see the whole board being a lot more colorful, and it's starting to resemble a 2-player game. Oh, in that case, red completely exterminated blue, which is quite cool. So if you think about it, colors don't really affect how Game of Life works, because if you continue to ignore color and only look at whether cells are alive or dead, it looks exactly the same. We're following exactly the same rules. But if we do look at color now, there's some interesting formations that can happen. Like the same 3x1 block called a blinker that I mentioned before can actually have 2 colors coexisting on the same formation. Until, of course, something interacts with it and then it falls apart. Next, let's get to gameplay, where we finally turn Conway's Game of Life into a competition between 2 players. Okay, suppose you're the red king and want to kill off the blue cells. You can only kill 1 cell between life iterations by tapping it. Can you do it? Hit undo if you get stuck. Okay, I don't really like how that's worded, but whatever, it doesn't need to be perfect. What this means is we want to kill off all these blue cells as quickly as possible, but we only have the resources to kill 1 of them at a time. So to start, let's try killing off this one and see what happens. So after it's killed, we can't kill any more, but we can press finish move, which will now do an iteration of Conway's Game of Life, following the rules that I described earlier, like that. Now we continue the process, killing off blue cells and hoping that we can finally exterminate all of them. We can also choose to kill our own cells, but that's not really going to have an effect. So to finally finish off the blues, I can tap the cell in the middle here, and then after 1 iteration, we're done. The blues are gone. The genocide is complete. That's the main mechanic of the game, but we have to introduce 1 more feature. Good job, but it's not always so easy. Luckily, you can also give birth to red cells. Tap a dead cell. Next, you'll need to sacrifice 2 living red cells to produce the biomass for the birth. So as you see described here, we have 2 options. Let's look at option 2. If I want to give birth to a red cell right here, I can just tap it. Now here's a red cell with 2 compartments, like the ventricles of a heart. If we want this red cell to become alive, we need to provide it with enough nutrients for a full birth. That means 2 already living red cells need to sacrifice themselves. So let's choose that one, and that one. There we go. Now this cell has been born. But again, after we do any move, we have to do an iteration of Conway's Game of Life, and actually that cell dies right afterward, and we're back to where we started. But we can also give birth to cells closer, like that, and there we go, that's more red births. So the reason this move is important is because if you look at this board, you can try to kill off all the blue cells by tapping on them individually, but these 2x2 blocks are very resilient, meaning if they lose one of their corners, they will grow it back right after 1 iteration. So as you keep trying to kill them off, they just keep regrowing, and you get nowhere. It turns out the real way to kill off these blue cells is through overpopulation, because if you look closely, every one of these cells has 3 neighbors. That's the maximum. If you go any higher to 4, they start dying off. So what you want to do is birth one of your own cells right next to it. You might have to sacrifice some of your own cells to get that to happen, but once that happens, you can see 2 blue cells will now die. And after a few more iterations, it doesn't really matter what we do in this time, that formation will fully die off. And that's really the only way to get rid of 2x2 blocks. Okay, that'll die on its own. Let's deal with this one down here. And now it's just a matter of time. There we go, the blues are gone once again. So in pages 5 and 6, I showed you the 2 possible game moves that you can do in order to try to exterminate the other color. And that's actually the entire goal of Game of Life and Death. There's a red player and a blue player. Each player is trying to exterminate the other color, and the first one to do so wins the game. So that's it for the tutorial. Now I'll just go through an example game to show you how it works from start to finish. Okay, so we've got a lot of options, but you don't have to worry about them. You can just hit create. But one thing we can change is make it so that we're playing against an artificial intelligence. Let's go with a smart AI because we gotta prepare for the singularity. Okay, create. Now the board starts out randomly generated, but also rotationally symmetrical, so that both players start out with the same number of cells. In this way, it's a level playing field, and if neither player were to make any moves, both populations would die out at exactly the same time, which means it's entirely fair. But we do get to make moves, which means it's my turn to determine how I'm going to exterminate the blue population as quickly as possible. So either I'm going to kill a cell, as you can see here, or I'm going to give birth to a cell at the sacrifice of 2 of my own cells. Looking at the board right now, my own cell right here is participating in giving birth to this blue cell, and this blue cell, and also keeping this living blue cell alive. So maybe if I kill off this cell, I can actually hurt the blue team a little bit more. So after doing that, I hit finish move. But the smart AI thinks very quickly, so right as that happens, its little white dot is out there to make a move. So you can see, you can actually go undo and redo quite easily, but the smart AI decided to kill my cell right there. And now we're here, and it's my turn again. And wow, the smart AI is already better, pulling 5 cells ahead of me. When you have a horizontal line like this, each cell depends on all the surrounding cells to have the minimum 2 neighbors to survive. So if you kill any cell of this like rope, it'll start to unravel on both sides. So if I kill that, you can see this cell's gonna die and this cell's gonna die. That seems pretty good to me. And yeah, the AI had the same idea, trying to kill off that rope. But look at that, I only have 6 cells left and the smart AI has 14, so it looks like it's near the end for me. Now, I know this T tetramino formation will produce a traffic light in a few generations, which just means it'll turn into 12 cells before it stabilizes. That's a lot, so if we can kill it off before that happens, then that would be nice. So by just killing that one cell, I know that it will die off instead of becoming 12 cells. But it looks like I'm about to lose. Yes, I lost. See, player 2 wins. The cause player 1's population was wiped out. Actually, that was a really short game. Usually 10x10 boards last to about like 10 to 15 moves instead of just 7. But I guess I was especially bad at that one. So you can see redo. If you hold it down, you can do a replay of the whole game. Look at that, wow. So that is Game of Life and Death. You can play with other humans, you can play against AI, you can even have 2 AIs playing against each other, like this. Go. Look how fast they're going, they're thinking really fast. Who's gonna win? Vote in the comments before you see the end. And don't lie, don't change your comment after. Ooh, okay, looks like red's gonna win. But both of these AIs, okay, I use a very rudimentary algorithm to determine how they're gonna make their moves, but when they're smart AI, I'm trying to make them run as intelligently as possible. So red won that time. What it does is it sees the ratio of its own cells to the enemy cells in 2 generations, and then tries every single possible move on the board. And whichever one results in the highest ratio in 2 generations is the one it selects. And that's a very simple algorithm since it doesn't consider other players' moves in between, but it works well enough to beat me most of the time. And finally, you can play with other friends who have iPhones online with Game Center by pressing this. No, actually no, you don't press that. You press New Game, and then you create your game, but you make sure to press Online Game, and what that will do is when you hit create, it opens up Game Center. And now if you want to create a game, you press this plus in the corner. Even if you already have games existing here, if you want to start a new game, you got to press the plus. Now I have to warn you, it's very buggy. So like 50% of the time it just won't work. But you press invite friends and then you do it through the messages app. Oh wait, I don't want to invite myself. Okay, I'm going to play against Michael since he's the only person who shared a room with me. Let's play game together. Wow. There we go, send that message now. And now it opens up a game, you make your move, finish move, and now you have to wait for the other person to respond. So hopefully... Okay, yeah, your phone should get a notification soon.
Oh, I don't have the new app though.
That sums up how Game of Life and Death works. I hope you found it interesting and will give it a try in the near future. Currently, Zwei holds the world record for being the first person to beat the Smart AI on a 20x20 board, but then I beat him by beating the Smart AI with a margin of 17 cells. But I think both of our strategies right now are still pretty naive. It would be really cool if some of you players developed more advanced strategies that let you beat the AI essentially every time. And then you can set up some casual GOLAD tournaments where everybody brings in their iPhones and plays in real life, tournament bracket style. And you just know thousands of people are gonna show up, because who could resist becoming a GOLADiator? Maybe if you're real ambitious, you could try creating your own GOLAD artificial intelligence player. I heard some people on the H-Twin Central Discord server talking about creating an alpha GOLAD, so maybe that's already in the works. And one final thing, this whole game is dedicated to John Conway, the person who created the original Conway's Game of Life. I know he said previously that he doesn't like being associated with this game too much anymore, but it would still be so cool if he somehow found out about my game. That would be my dream. So if any of you know John Conway personally, do you think you could help me out with that? Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, future GOLADiators, and I'll see you go later.